Support Committee, Cater's Academy, we give thanks to the great God Olodumare for the gift of life. We give thanks to our ancestors of the Mass, all our ancestors who braved the Middle Passage, who braved all those 400 years of enslavement, but who were able to call on their traditions, their spiritual belief systems, the memory of all their traditions. We did not come here empty-handed. We came with the spirits of our ancestors, with the memory of our ancestors. We give thanks and praise to all those who suffered. We give thanks and praise for our ancestors of the Mass who took their traditions and forged them into a source of resistance that help us to survive. We remember them today. We give thanks. May all that we do today be to their honor, be to their glory. May they always be with us and sustain us and help us to continue to fight for our traditions. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Greetings and welcome. Hola, bienvenue. Ekasan, Akoaba, bonsoir. How are you going? Welcome to Ida Kada's presentation of Africa and the T&T Carnival towards recognition and visibility in collaboration with the Emancipation Support Committee and the Kitas IFA Institute. We are so happy that you are able to join us. And I know people from all over the world are listening and looking on right now. I want to just very briefly give you a little insight into who you're going to be listening to today. You saw one of the people there just now doing libation, author, poet, activist, N2 Pearl Springer. There she is. Sitting next to Attila Springer, writer, activist, communication specialist, Juvies, all kind of thing. I'm not giving all you the bio, we don't have whole day. Right. And then we are so privileged and blessed to have Araba Olatunji Somorin, Aboro Aboye Aboshishe. And he is going to be talking about IFA in the metaverse and all kind of exciting things. And I will share a little something with you during the session too. And we have Zakia Uzuma Wadada from the Emancipation Support Committee. And so we are so pleased to have Zakia here with us. So before we go in to all of the speeches and all of that, I just want to say that as part of our welcome, we are here. It is African History Month in November in Trinidad and Tobago. That's when we celebrate it. And we chose today, which is the International Day Against the Illicit Trafficking of Cultural Property. It is a UNESCO commemoration. And I just want to quote what they said, that they felt it was important to have a day like this because the theft, looting, and illicit trafficking of cultural property takes place in every country, robbing people of their culture, their identity, and their history. And today is an important aspect of giving recognition to the fact that this happens and to getting people to understand how traumatic it leaves countries and societies and getting people to do something about it. So as we saw just this week, France returned the Benin statues that were looted by French soldiers back in 1892, more than 120 years ago. So that's a good thing. We want the other former colonial powers to continue to do the right thing and honor and accept their works from the past and make it right. Um, we also want to go in and thank the Emancipation Support Committee for supporting us in terms of the technical aspect of it, setting up this program, making sure that it runs smoothly, Rennie working quietly in the background. We want to thank her so much for her lovely warm spirit and generosity. And without further ado, I think that's my time. For the welcome, I want to invite Zakia to bring greetings on behalf of the Emancipation Support Committee. Zakia.
Thank you very much, Dara. It is such a privilege for us to be invited to partner with you and the Tingiskatu Institute to be part of this important discussion. We thank you all for giving us this opportunity because, within African History Month, it is important for us to continue to highlight the ways in which our people, through all the challenges and all the trauma, that we continue to be in, you can't beat us, we just continue to show up everywhere. And we have been showing up in the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. And it is important for us here to understand what is happening in Carnival. So going into and examining the spiritual background and the African cultural background to our Trinidad and Tobago Carnival is a fitting conversation for us to have at this time. So it is our pleasure, and we look forward to further similar kind of collaboration. So thank you, Dara. Thank you, Baba Sumorin, for including us in this most important panel discussion. Thank you.
Very much, Zakia, Executive Director of the Emancipation Support Committee, and I would have to say a constant in my life and the life of my family for a very, very long time. To delve a little bit deeper into the reasons for us being here today, I would like to invite Attila to give some philosophical context to what we are doing here this afternoon. So, Attila.
Thank you so much, Dara, and thanks, Rennie, for starting with that video, which is some footage that I took in Nigeria, in Lagos, at Lagos Carnival in 2014. It was a huge surprise to me to arrive in Lagos, having gone to Nigeria for the Ifa festival that was being hosted by the Alafin of Oyo. And then go to Lagos. And actually, I was staying with the niece of Fela Anikulapo Kuti. So I just need to call his name there because he's a really crucial person in our cosmos and in our musical and creative history of the African diaspora. And so to arrive in Lagos and see this manifestation of masquerade. Now, Lagos Carnival is a kind of coming together of modernity and traditional, like ours is as well. And so I was in the stadium for maybe a couple hours, and I had seen no traditional mask. There was a lot of parading of the same kind of masquerade mask, pretty masks that we see now in Trinidad and Tobago. And then all of a sudden, there was this traditional mask coming around the track. And I ran from where I was to get up close and personal with this mask. And, you know, I mean, as part of the family that I come from, you know, we've been talking for years about the visceral connections between us and the continent. And, you know, witnessing firsthand that Adam Lorraine band, it was essentially, I was seeing Adam Lorraine band in front of my eyes, manifest in its perhaps original form, manifest in an older form than we had been told existed. Because the mythology that we get when we hear about Dame Lorraine in Trinidad is that it was a beautiful French lady. But here was I in Lagos getting a totally different sense of what a masquerade could be and what a masquerade can mean when it looks like Dame Lorraine, right? And so that moment just sort of electrified me in one way, but it also reminded me of why the work that Ida Cater does is so important, to reconnect the history of who we are to who we are now and to who we can be in the future. But if we don't have piece of the history, if we don't have pieces of the past, if we're not connected to the story that existed before we got a story that was given to us, then how can we really move forward in a way that is wholesome, in a way that is true, in a way that is in keeping with who we are as African people, as people of African descent, as people of the African diaspora? You know, it's really crucial for us to delve back into the story now, particularly because we no longer have Carnival in the way that we have come to appreciate us having Carnival. We are in this state of flux and void right now, and that emptiness is an opportunity for us to grieve at the loss of something that we have not understood, and also to reimagine what it could be when we have an opportunity to do it again. People who are connected to their ritual never stop doing their ritual. And so we don't actually need the government to tell us that today is Carnival Day for us to observe the ritual that is mandated by our genetic memory. We don't need the government to tell us that. We need to be safe, we need to protect ourselves, but we also need to recognize that ritual is there for a reason. And if we feel empty, if we feel lost, we need to go back to our rituals. We need to go back into what our mask means. We need to go back into who we are and understand that rituals of death, rituals of life, rituals of birth, rituals of rebirth are crucial to who we are as a people, crucial to any human being wherever they are on earth. And so this is some of the context of why we're having this conversation today, because too often we ignore, we forget, we deny that Africa is at the core and at the root of why we have a carnival in the first place, because it was the people of Port of Spain, with support of people from surrounding areas and communities, the stick fighters, the Jamettes, the people of ill repute, the people of disrepute, the people of calumny and chaos, who restored order to the society by saying, this ritual is important to us and we must have it or else. And so I speak with the endorsement only of the elders who have taught me, and I give thanks to the elders who have taught me. I'll shout them out now. People like Roel Gibbons, people like Miss N2, who's sitting at my right side, people like Erin Falami, people like all of the steel pan elders, people like my own father, whose nickname was the Marshal and lived at the bottom of Laventil Road, and where desperados used to turn around to go back up the hill, right? So, I claim all of this as part of my legacy. I claim mass, I claim masquerade, I claim ritual as part of my legacy and as part of my past and as part of my present and as part of my future. So enjoy the deliberations of today. I hope that you get involved in the conversation. I hope that that's enough context, Dara. I mean, I went totally off script there, but a while. So I hope that that's enough context for today. And I'm really looking forward to us getting into the conversation.
Oh, I wouldn't say that you're wild at all. No. I'm sure everybody enjoyed what you had to say. So we appreciate it. Context is important, crucial. And that point about claiming the carnival, claiming it for ourselves. But you can't claim it if you don't have the information and if you don't have the history. So at this point, I have the pleasure to introduce Araba Olatunji Shomorin, a great impact in our life and in our country. And he is going to speak on the place of masquerade in the IFA metaverse. So over to you, Baba. Give thanks.
Thank you very much. A pleasant evening, afternoon, night, wherever we are in the whole world. I want to thank the organizers, the Dakeda Group, and other collaborators, Emancipation Support Committee. Today, K2CIFA Institute has been given the role to talk about the role of IFA, or what does IFA says about masquerade or the ancestors, Egungun, as I would call it. Well, quite a number of things that IFA says. The metaverse says a lot about Egungun, about our ancestors. I would like to use this slide in between, please. First, let us start from what we call Odu Ifa. Ifa speaks about how important our ancestors are, talking about the fact that we all have a father and a mother. In Ogunda Isheshe, one of the Odu Ifa, there are 256 of them. It speaks specifically about what is called Isheshe. And Isheshe means the primordial. Isheshe means the origin. Orirun. Isheshe means where it started from. So as many as Ifa, okay, that is okay with the slide. You can stop there. Thank you. As many as Ifa says it, starting from Ogunda Isheshe, Ifa says our father and our mother is also our Isheshe. Even in modern day science, we know how important the essential ingredient male and female bring about before we all come into existence. And this is how important Egungun is, ancestors are in Ifa metaverse. So Ifa says our Isheshe is our origin, is our beginning. We are all a reflection of who our father and our mother or even our grandparents are. So, and the first thing that determines who we are is the parent stock, is the parent gene. That is one. In another SFA, Odimeji explained how Yewande was told that whatever you want to do, take Yewande as one Janet or Mary. So Yewande was told that once you give homage, you salute, you recognize, you pay homage, you say Iba to your parents, both father and mother, which by extension will have acknowledged your ancestor, grandparents on both sides. Whatever you do will surely manifest well. So this also talks about how Ifa Metaverse sees the importance of Egungun. Now, if you are looking at the slide, now the slide you are seeing, the images, the picture, just like what Attila said in the video we saw, these are Eku, as they are called. Eku is what people wears that make them to that what we call masquerade. So what you call, or what we all know as masqueraders, wears Eku. Eku is a special attire. It's a special attire made to recognize, to remember, to pay homage, to reenact the actions, the reactions, the events of the past by our ancestors. So wearing of mask, as you call it, wearing of Eku, is a way to venerate, to celebrate, to give thanks, to acknowledge what our ancestors, either as father or mother, uncle or aunt or grandparents, or those who will have given us one form of guidance or advice in the society. They are part of the ancestral realm that take us to where we are. Please, next slide. The importance of Egungun is a lot to say. It cannot be, it's a lot in what if I put it in the metaverse. We all have parents, and ancestor is a very important part of our life. And we are all a reflection of who our father and mother and our grandparents are. In another essay, Ifa, where Ifa speaks about, you can move on to the next, thank you. Now, this slide talks about masking or wearing of the special attire. What appear as mask is what is called, what I call the special attire, and it's called Eku. And you can see all the colorful attire you are seeing, they are made in celebration or in remembrance of one ancestor or the other. What determines the nature, the texture, the type of material depends on what aspect, what essence, what part of life of the ancestor in question that people choose to celebrate or remember him or her about. Next slide, please. Speaking about the role of Egungun, like I said, in many metaverse, if I point to the role of Egungun, I've spoken about Egungun being our Isheshe, being the origin, being the primordial. And even in the ancient method of identifying problems and profiling solution, Egungun is well recognized. When anybody goes before an owl and you are given one of the tools of the owl to speak to, and that will connect with your energy to give you a deep spiritual scan, the owl will get an Odu, and in the process, the owl will find out, is this person closer to balance or not? When it gets to the solution profiling stage, one of the ways of profiling solution is to ask what type of measures to be done. Is it what we call Ebo or what is called Adimu? And there are 4 principal Adimu. It may be, by Adimu, I mean special offering to a particular energy. Egungun, our ancestor, are one of the 4 principles that Adimu can be done to. It may be Adimu to your Ori. It may be Adimu to an Imale, which means an aspect of the creative force, what some people may know as Orisha. It may be Adimu to Egungun, Imale, Ifa, and your Ori. So this also explains where many Ifa metaverse place Egungun. Next slide, please. The performance of Egungun Alasho, for example, where the special attire is used by someone, is a way of reenactment and tapping into the essence of the ancestor in question. Another essay far from Owoni Oshe speaks about the importance of Egungun, the importance of our ancestors in our day-to-day activity. Briefly, I will give a short narrative from the Odu Owoni Oshe, where it speaks about an individual called Wigade. That is why the old people will call it Owoni Wigade. Wigade is an individual who used to work with mommy and daddy, father and mother on their farm in their business. But as the creator have it, Wigade's father and mother transited when Wigade was still young, and Wigade have younger siblings to take care of. So Wigade, as a responsible elder, was working on so many farms and doing so many things to take care of self and the siblings. But things were not in the best form. So Wigade went and seek Ifa guidance. After seeing our ancestor or his ancestor in his sleep in a dream form. And that was why Wigade went to cross-check and get guidance. And Wigade was told to stop going here and there. Go and work on your ancestral farm. And Wigade went back to the ancestral farm. That is the farm that the father and mother used to work on. And Wigade used to work with them. And while Wigade was working on the farm, not up to a couple of days, Wigade got into a space where the parents have stored a lot of valuables. And that was how Wigade win what I would call a jackpot. And with those resources that Wigade met on the ancestral farm, Wigade was able to become very rich, take care of the siblings, and Wigade now become a money lender and open so many business. And this SFR also talks about how ancestors guide, and direct one to a better way of life. In the example of Owoni Wigade. So that also speaks about the performance of the Egungun Alasho. So Wigade, for example, now, Wigade can later decide to reenact what the parents have done by preparing, designing, making an eku, that is the mask, the special attire that will be put on. So Egungun celebration, wearing of mask, wearing of eku is actually in celebration and in reenactment of our ancestors' way of life, thanking them, showing them appreciation, venerating them, and elevating their spirit, carrying on what they have done, and as a way of even reaching out to them as well. Next slide, please. Another essay, another verse, another metaverse that confirms and also show the presence of Africa in Trinidad and Tobago Carnival, that also touches on from one metaverse is from the Odu Olosumeji. In Olosumeji, Ifa speaks about Asha. Asha is what you all call Mokojombi here. In Olosumeji, Asha was an energy and Imale that went and seek Ifa guidance. And at that point, Asha was concerned about how Asha will go out with a lot of children, a lot of followers and players to perform, to express the ways of the ancestors. And Asha was concerned about their safety. And if you look at how Asha used to come out, we call them Asha, we call them Agere back home, and that is what we call Mokojombi. And Ifa assures Asha to go, and that Asha will go safely and return home peacefully. Hence the song Ogidigbo Ogidimo, Ikuki Pomo Asha Nireno, Ogidigbo Okan Shosho, that no death, no sickness, no negativity of any form will befall the children of Asha. So this is also another way of reenacting the essence of our ancestor, so that when people are going on Mokojombi or Agere, they will go safely without sustaining any injury or any damage of any form. Next slide, please. So I just want to show you some attire, some eku. You are seeing these different eku. Specifically, look at the one in the middle, where one stretches hand like this, that is from the continent, and the other one to the left is what people call jabs here. So you can see the closeness, you can see the similarity, you can see the fact that one definitely could have come out from the other one, and the similarity, just like Attila shows in the first video that we see. Please, next slide. I have spoken about Asha. Now you are seeing Asha. That is Agere, what is known as Mokojombi here. And Oduifa and Esefa Olosumeji also endorses that and accomplishes that. That is the root, that is the origin. Next slide, please. Okay, this is another slide that speaks about the Imale we call Paraka. Paraka and what you all call jab here. They look very similar. Paraka is an Imale. A number of SFA speaks about Paraka, and the similarity is obvious and very clear, even to the blind. So the performance and expression of Egungun through Eku may seem like masking. However, the motive behind it has spiritual connotation, spiritual roles, and also aims. Egungun play a significant role in balancing or bringing balance to individual life of all of us as a society and our world as a whole. So this is what K2CFA Institute would like to share with all of us for this celebration of African History Month in collaboration with the Akeda Group. Yes, I want to keep this slide for the advice at the last session. So that will be for the last, the other time when I'm asked to give advice to masqueraders, as you all put it. So the presence of Africa in Trinidad Carnival and Trinidad Carnival is a lot. It's so much to mention. I know other speakers, other presenters will still show more, but talking about how many Ifa Metaverse speaks to Egungun is what I've shared with you. Nobody dropped from anywhere. We all have a father and our mother, and our father and our mother are our ancestors. They are our Egungun, Egunle, and Oshauja, as we normally put them. And every tradition all over the whole world, they celebrate their own ancestor. Why not me and you? Whether All Souls, whether it's Thanksgiving or Old Mass or whatever they call it, is ancestral celebration, is Egungun celebration. And it's not different from the wearing of Eku that we present as masking. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, Idakeda. Thank you for this initiative. And K2CFA Institute is open and ready to support in more of this. Thank you, listeners.
Thank you so much, Baba. Awesome presentation, just merely from the fact that I'm sure that it helped to give a lot of you context. I could see plenty of you saying, oh, that is why. And I think it's important to recognize that that link to Africa, it is still so strong, whether from Brazil to Trinidad and Tobago, to Haiti, to New Orleans. The Egungun presence is there, strong as ever. And don't study anybody when they tell you that the Africans were brought to the New World and they lost all their culture. That ain't true. So, without talking anymore, let me bring on Entupul Springer, who is going to bring that context that Baba shared of the masking into the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival and talk a little bit. I mean, this evening we can't really go into a lot of detail, but she will talk a little bit about some of the connectivity now between our traditional masquerades and what Baba Shamorin just shared. So, Ms. Entu.
Nothing in my hand. Stripped it seemed of all humanity, nothing except the wisdom of centuries, concealed in my genes, except the knowledge in my heart in my hands, they close the door of no return. So they say. But through the door, I have already come, bringing my essence that none can take away. That none can take away. Thank you, Baba. The Trinidad Carnival is at the center of the cultural confidence of the African. It has developed almost paradoxically as an amalgam of rootedness and modernity. But the paradox of this cultural confidence is that we have created so much. We have given this country and the world so much, but yet we are separated from the source of where all of this richness came from. There's still that denial, lack of recognition and visibility of what Africa means to us, of all that Africa has given to us. The carnival has more and more been taken away from the African. As Leroy says, we mass, them carnival. I want to share two small experiences. As part in 1997, I was part of the Trinidad and Tobago contingent to the 5th World Conference of Orisha Tradition and Practice. It was held in San Francisco. We were amazed, those of us from Trinidad, that one of the most senior EL Orishas, known as the Ianifa Oshun, was wearing on her head a large fringe hat, a symbol of a high office, and it was exactly like that of the Midnight Robber. Additionally, in August 1998, I went to South Africa in Kwandebele, and the Ndebele people welcomed us with a dance. And it was a complete Midnight Robber dance with the hatchet and the movement and all of that. I got up and joined them, and they were amazed. How do you know our dance? They said. How do you know my dance? I said. And those incidents made me even more determined to search for the elements of Africa. There is so much that is African in the carnival. When we look, for instance, at Juve morning, the mud mass, or some of our researchers have linked that with the creative energy of Obatala, forging human beings from that sacred mud. When we look at the Mokojambi and the dwarf that normally follows it, some of our researchers have also linked that to the fact that creative energy of Obatala, who would mistakenly have created dwarfs and people with deformities. And this dwarf follows the Mokojambi as a reminder of that. So it is everywhere. Africa is everywhere. I want to talk a little bit of what we saw in the Dame Lorraine. The Dame Lorraine masquerade, as we saw from what Tilla showed, owes much of its form to the Gelede masquerade of the Yoruba people. We need to remember that in 1807, after the end in the trade in our African ancestors, many Yoruba people came as indentured laborers, some say as many as 6,000, and occupied that huge area, Belmont, Laventille, Mova, all that area. So much so that at one time it was known as Yoruba Town or Yoruba Village. And so the genesis of our masking traditions in so many aspects, so many ways, can be traced back to the Yoruba people. Inside of that area there are shrines to the Imale that are more than 100 years old, that have been there and still exist. Those Orisha yards cradled the steel band in its early beginnings. Even in the 19th century, so-called Shango bands used to come down from Laventille and they were chased off the streets. One of the writers at the time speak of them as talking mumbo jumbo, not recognizing the significance and importance of ritual that both Baba and Tilla spoke about. So people know that every year we have done the Kambule, and in that production, we deliberately recreate the link between our masking traditions and emancipation and resistance. The Africans survived because of that, carrying in our genes the remembrance of our traditions. And so, inside of the African masking traditions, we use our spirituality and our masking traditions as part of our armory of resistance to enslavement. It is very well documented that there was no rebellion that was not incited, encouraged from African spirituality, from the Great Revolution in Haiti to the revolts of the Akan peoples up and down the Caribbean, Tobago, Trinidad. Our spirituality was at the heart of resistance, but also our masking traditions. We use them as part of our armory of resistance. Our masking traditions, our spirituality were fused into that. We can't go into all of these elements, but let me just talk specifically of the Dame Lorraine, owing much of its form to the Gelede masquerade of the Yoruba people, as we saw in its exaggeration of female body parts. One of the Yoruba scholars, a chap called Dopamu, described the Gelede masquerade, and I quote, "The fundamental purpose of Gelede is to pay tribute to and therefore to derive from female mystical power." In my understanding and in the teachings I have had from Iya Rodney, from my Olowo Olatunji Somorin, it is very clear to me that the African in Ifa, there's a lot of respect for the power, for the female mystical essence. The mothers control life, fertility, death, wealth. And so there was this tradition in the Gallaudet masquerade of celebrating that female spiritual essence. But what did we do? Our people worked in the homes, worked in the plantations, were close to these people. So we took the Gallaudet masquerade and ritualized it into a form of satire, into a weapon of cultural resistance, by using it to laugh at these people. Because we knew them. We knew their depravity, their laziness, their nastiness. And we portrayed that in the Dame Lorraine with its traditional music, with its traditional movement, with the match l'école, with the butler, and all of those things which you see in the Dame Lorraine Ball. The Dame Lorraine Ball was done in the barrack setting where the Calypso tent developed, and which was a mass making tent. And Sunday night, Carnival Sunday night, they would put on the Dame Lorraine Ball, and it was laughter because they had the characters, Monsieur Gros Lolo, Monsieur Gros Coco, Madame Gros Bonda, Madame Gros Tete, Gros Tete, all of those things. And we revived it because it had stopped being performed. It was frowned upon, of course. We revived it in our Camboulet, so that this was one of the way of using our traditional masking spiritual traditions and transform it into a form of resistance. I will talk a little bit now about the Pero. It has been described as, by one of our scholars, Errol Hill, and I will quote, "From the prankest, witty but harmless European clown, the Pero in Trinidad became a loquacious, combative, and fearless masquer whose rhetorical skill was merely a prelude to a violent duel with whips or stick. The Trinidad Pero is just a descendant of the bâtonnier, the stick fighter, and accordingly can trace his lineage back to the rituals of the enslaved. Battles were very fierce with this Pero, so much so that in 1896, a law was passed to control the behavior, to ban them actually. You had to have police permission to play the Pero. One of our other scholars, Jeff Henry, talks about the courage of this Pero, the imperious manner, the supercilious demeanor, the violence, the need to conquer, because each Pero had an area of Port of Spain demarcated as his, and no other Pero could come there without fight. So his need to conquer, to dominate and own territory. And he cites that as being very similar to the attitude of the Europeans. Very interesting link. But the Pero these days has lost that whip, that stick. And now the whip that the Pero has is just a little plaything. There's just one person, Felix Edinburgh, who practices and is well known as a Pero. Not too much is happening with the Pero, but again, as you see on the screen, we are keeping it alive in the Camboulet. So much to be said. Let me speak a little bit about the Moko Jambi. Baba has done my job for me. So he has talked so much about the Mokojambi, the ancestral spirit that overlooks the community, seen beyond this present space and time, providing a sense of the future. The Mokojambi has been described as being part of a secret society among the Efik people. I've talked about the fact that in earlier times, he was accompanied by a dwarf who was dressed in the same costume and accompanied by a drum. And of course, with the creation of the sticks and all of that, it was a sacred task. You cut the wood from a particular tree. You go through certain rituals with the wood according to the moon and all of that. And so that even the costume, the sticks of the Mokojambi were ritualized. In Trinidad, we have two big schools of Mokojambi, one in South by Junior Bisnath and the one in North by Glenn Dragon D'Souza. So I think I talk a long time about these three masquerades. We can't go into all, but I just want to close off by saying that we need to reclaim our masquerade, and we cannot do that without recognizing the link between our masquerades and our ancestors. The fact that they have roots in our spirituality. The fact that these masking traditions were part of the armory of resistance amongst our people. We have to watch at the fact that African people, despite the fact that the mask came out of our bellies, have been pushed out of it. And the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival is now seen as simply bikini and beads. In Ida Keda, our Kambule holds on strongly in recognition of the fact that it was African energy, African struggle, African resistance that gave this country its carnival. That if African people in 1881 did not wage resistance, our mass would not have existed because it was banned. Everything that the African has was fought for. Emancipation was not a gift, it was fought for. And we need to remember that the Carnival of the African was originally a celebration of emancipation, a celebration of emancipation. Our carnival was on August 1st, the day of emancipation. And as we look at what is happening with all the European enslavers, we have to remember that that same day, August the 1st, with the viciousness of the Europeans and their way of trying to force us to forget our history, that same day, in a complete act of betrayal, was given to Columbus. So August 1st was celebrated as Columbus Day until continuous resistance being linked from accelerated from 1970 back. But we must remember that emancipation was always celebrated, never stopped, despite formal discouragement, in 1985, we were given back. We took back, after a lot of protests, our day, and now we have Emancipation Day, which was the beginning, the day in which we celebrated our carnival. We need to guard our freedoms jealously, as the Pharaoh says in Kambule, for somebody always ready to take it away from we. Let us give praise to our ancestors, recognize them, pay homage to them always, so that they will be with us and protect us.
Ashe. Thank you, Ms. Antu, for that. And I saw that people have been posting questions on the Facebook page, and so we will get to that shortly. And I just want to remind people to continue to support the people who have put this presentation together for you today. Ida Kada on the Kambale Movement and Facebook page, Emancipation Support Committee, and the Kitus IFA Institute, which is an amazing source and information for understanding our connection to Africa. So we're going to talk Midnight Rubber now. So let's have the video, please.
Hey, red, black, and white. Hey,
I'm the Midnight Rubber, the one of the best, the one wetter than the rest. I am the original Midnight Rubber, the king of traditional mass. I am famous for the rubber talk, and the rubber talk does go something like this. Away down from the heightless region of the phantom graveyard came I, the most impregnable and the most adorable chief of crime. Where I come from, the sun never shines, the rain never falls, the grass never grows, and the wind refuses to blow. For I'll bite a piece of the moon and shorten the season, for I am the Midnight Rubber.
Carry Fest.
So the Midnight Rubber is one of the few speaking traditional characters of the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. Researchers say that the Midnight Rubber emerged around the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, all around the time of the end of World War II, the growth of American pop culture, and a burgeoning of urban life in Port of Spain. In fact, there used to be bands of Midnight Rubbers, and Professor Jeff Henry, says that Midnight Rubber performers live to encounter their rivals on the streets of carnival time to test their skills against one another in full view of the street audience. In a lot of ways, the Midnight Rubber was a masquerade of resistance. And I think that sensitivity and that understanding of the Midnight Rubber's resistance has penetrated, in more recent times. But I think it was a different kind of resistance when the Midnight Rubbers first came around, because we had a curious situation where we were told that they came really from the American cowboys, right? Before we bring up the picture, I want to just say that there are certain characteristics of the Midnight Rubber. You have the broad brim hat, you have a cape, you have a loose fitting tunic. This is in terms of the costume I'm describing. Loose fitting trousers. They paint their face white. And of course they have a whistle, and they have a particular rhythm with the whistle. All right, so if you bring up the picture now of the cowboy. So I suppose looking at the cowboy you know, you could see perhaps where the cape came from. Um, the midnight robbers, they, all of them, especially in the earlys, they would have guns. But the hat is not really the hat that you just saw in the video. He doesn't have any whistle. You know, and cowboys are noted for their brevity. You know, you don't have any cowboy talking any long talk like that. You know, it's, you know, howdy partner, and you know, they part of their charm is not saying much. Yeah. So, I have always been fascinated by the Midnight Robber, not understanding where what you saw in the video, what is the connection between what you saw in the video and this picture that we have up here. So we could take off the picture now. So in research that has been done by Professor Jeff Henry, Professor Hollis Liverpool, and others, we understand that that talking, that element of speech portrayed by the Midnight Robber really would have come from the tradition of the griot. Now, in the post-emancipation period between like 1837 and 1867, it is said that about 36,000 Africans, free Africans, came to Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, and about 9,000 or so came to Trinidad. And as Entu mentioned, they went to Belmont, Laventille, settled all over. And so, of course, they would have brought their tradition. So they would have known and understood about this tradition of the griot. And in African ancient societies, the griot was an advisor to royalty. They were learned, they were very talented, whether they could sing, they could play an instrument, but they were also storytellers. And they were very respected within the community as well, for the fact that they had all of this knowledge, they had all of this spiritual prowess, and they had the ear, of course, of the royalty. And the griot would use their ability to tell stories and express themselves to, of course, make sure that they were heard, continue the history of the particular community, pass it down from generation to generation. And the griot became someone within society, and it is said that our calypso, our tradition of calypso, has come from that ability to speak grand words and to express themselves very elaborately. So one of these speeches that is very common that you would hear, for the day my mother gave birth to me, the sun refused to shine and the wind ceased blowing. Many mothers that day gave birth, but to deformed children. Plagues and pestilence pestered the city, for atomic eruption raged in the mountains. Philosophers, scientists, professors said the world has come to an end. But no, it was me. A monarch was born, master of all I survey, and my right where none could dispute. Yeah, so that whole form of here I am, all right, that certainly has nothing to do with a cowboy. And then Entu talked about her visit to the Kwandebele, part of the Ndebele in South Africa. Now, Professor Liverpool, in his book Rituals of Power and Rebellion, looking at practices in the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival, he identifies a number of peoples across Africa. But the Ndebele, what we know from research is that in around the 1830s or so, the Boers forced them to leave and flee. And throughout Africa, where there was any kind of disruption, you would have people moving about. So although we were taught in school that our ancestors came from the western coast of Africa, I think that research would also show that there would have been influences coming from other parts of the continent. So I say that to explain why we would have had the introduction of the whistle inside of there. And the Kwandebele, they also have a traditional Zulu dance where they have the use of the whistle. All right. I'm just going to just talk about the costume briefly. So we talked about, and you would have seen, I don't know how many of your eyes caught in Baba's presentation, there's a particular picture of people in, see, I have my hat here, in hats like this, right? And if we could bring up the picture now of the AU Festival, please. And what research has shown is that, right, so the broad brim hat, let me see the other photograph as well, please. Right, so while it comes up, I'll talk to you a little bit about it. So the broad brim hat and that cape and that loose clothing, it is said that it came from actually this AO festival, which was first recorded in the 19th century, but I'm certain that it is much older than that, and perhaps Baba Shamorin can speak to that. And it is said that, and again, I can be corrected, but the research is saying that this festival is really connected with royalty. It's connected with burial rites for a highly regarded chief who was a member of this society. And Molly Ahi, okay, so Baba had a picture similar to this. So I don't know if you recognize the hat and the cape. And if you look to the left, you will see there's a stick in his hand, which is perhaps where the whole idea of the gun would have come about as well, right? And Molly Ahi, in her research, she is a dancer, past now, who was also a member of the Ifa Orisha belief system, and had an interest in understanding the connection between dance and Africa. And she linked also the performance and the costuming and so of the Midnight Rubber to the Ogboni secret society of the Yoruba peoples, right? So I have a lot more that I could say about the Midnight Rubber, but time does not allow for me to go into it, because the dance, we haven't even gotten into the dance yet. I mean, cowboys don't dance. And the Midnight Rubber has a particular movement where he lifts and raises one foot. And Professor Jeff Henry actually mentions the whole issue of the dance and so on. He says the whistle in his mouth blew constantly in counter rhythm to his perpetual movements, every one a deliberate action. Blowing the whistle, stopping only to talk, he would lift his left leg from the knees and then slamming it with some force on the ground, one could feel the earth shake. Yeah. And to me, that always hints about the whole notion about warriorhood. And that dance, I have actually found Ghanaian dance very, very similar, where you have very militarized movements and the same movement of the left leg going up and back and the right leg going up and back, spinning and turning. And I find it very fascinating that that is how our Midnight Rubber moves. So nothing like a cowboy. He's talking all these saying all these grand words, blowing a whistle, and he's definitely not holding a gun. All right. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk about the Midnight Rubber and the other traditional masquerades is because, yes, while it is important to innovate and to bring traditional characters into the present time and to use them to convey certain messages, like for instance, we have used, and to talk about Cambele, we have used the baby doll in schools and so on to talk about, give lessons of peer pressure and all of that. But I think just to repeat what the other speakers have been saying, that we have to practice Sankofa, to go back and get it, to go back and understand where we came from, so that we don't just do things, as we say here. We don't just do things. We understand, for instance, I remember I noticed that it has stopped now, but there used to be a thing of using the Moko Jambi at events and have Moko Jambi lining the entrance. And the Moko Jambi is not a party favor. As you have heard, the Moko Jambi is an Egungun, an ancestor, a serious person, a serious representation, a serious Imale, not person, apologies, a serious Imale or deity who is there to protect us. So I want to say that I have actually written very extensively on this, and next year, 2022, you may actually be able to get the full story, which we will make available on Ida Keda and other sites and so on. So we stay tuned, stay connected with us, so that you could find out a little bit more about that. I also want to remind people as well, I hope you're enjoying this. I've been seeing a lot of people sending hearts and sharing our content. We just want to ask that you continue to support us. We have, this is Ida Keda, we have a GoFundMe account, a FundMe T&T account. It's Cambele, the Spirit of Resistance and Creativity in the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. So it's FundMe T&T. It is on the link is on our website, and I guess you can just go straight to the link as well. Our website is idacadagroup.com. I want to ask you to also to like us, follow us, and also email us at idacadaconnect@gmail.com for more information. And do the same with the Emancipation Support Committee and Kita Sifa Institute. Support us because next year our thing is Carnival, and in 2022 we want to continue bringing programs like this to you. And if we are allowed on the streets or to do some sort of carnival in any form, we need the support to do that, because as you know, COVID-19 has decimated the livelihoods of artists. All right, so we want to move now, talking about performance and carnival, into one of the hottest and sexiest and most fascinating aspects of our carnival. But it is also that aspect of our carnival that possibly is the most spiritual, and people do not understand that, which is why I guess they've been introducing chocolate bands. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion. Let me introduce again Attila Springer to talk to you a little bit about Juve. Attila, you have a few minutes because we're running out of time.
Turn the whole world upside down. Blue color pigment, you cannot make it. Blue color pigment, you cannot. 10,000 dirty angels, chipping through water's pain, covered in blue again. Friends and neighbors, even strangers, reveling as one. Juve morning come, good Juve morning children. Angels, sinners and saints as one.
Okay, so let me see if I can make it through this presentation without starting to bawl, because it's 2 years now I ain't get to Juve. No, it's actually 1 year, but next year might be another year that I might not get to Juve, and that is filling me with a lot of fear and trepidation. I chose that video because, and thanks to Badawi of Detonator for granting me permission to use it. I chose that video because I think that it captures the energy of what Juve is. And I want to start what I'm saying by quoting one of the patron orishas of the Republic of Belmont, Claudia Jones, who says, a people's art is the genesis of their freedom. And what could be more of a threat to a society that owns human bodies than for these people who have been owned to take to the street and proclaim their freedom with their bodies? What could be more sacred than your own body, the body that you're born with, the body that came out of your mother? What could be more sacred than taking to the streets to give reverence to the fact that you have a body? The fact that you have a body is part of the reason why you're existing. The fact that you have a body is evidence that somebody gave birth to you. And I go back to what Baba Shumarin spoke about. You know, the fact that we have ancestors, the fact that we have a mother and father is deeply connected to the reason why we are here, why we are physically present. And so when there was that deep misunderstanding of what Juve in its original form called Cambule meant by the British authorities, who can really blame them? Because just 5 minutes ago, just a year ago, just 2 days ago, they owned African bodies. And in order for them to make that separation in their minds, to be able to own people, they had to make these people into not really people. And so that idea that African people are not really people, it still pervades to today. And you see it in the way that we are policed. You see it in the way that our spirituality continues to be referred to. You see it in the way that we are not allowed leisure or ritual in the spaces that are sacred to us. Beach, for example, but that's another story. But speaking of sacred and speaking of the Black body, I want to talk about the Jab Molasi and what the Jab Molasi, why it's so deeply connected to Juve and to Cambule. There's a French Creole statement, a Creole song, a Creole identifier, which says, Jab Seoneg. Jab Seoneg. The devil is a Black man. The devil is Black. And so what is the real reason for African people absorbing that reality of their bodies and turning it on its head to create a space for ritual, a space for recognition of the horrors of what African people went through on the plantations? Out of that, you get the Jab Molasi. And the Jab Molasi is a devil who is covered in molasses, a byproduct of the thing that these bodies were brought to this place to make. And in those plantations where people would fall into a vat of thing, their arm would get caught in the machinery, they would be punished, deeply, deeply punished for resisting the forced labor that they were forced to endure for as long as their life existed in this plane, you have this mass of resistance, you have this mass of remembrance, and you have this mass of protest against what was done with your body. And so, as a statement of Black liberation, the jab jab emerges. And the jab jab does not only exist here in Trinidad, the jab exists everywhere in the Caribbean. You can find the jab in Haiti. You can find the jab in Guadeloupe. You can find the jab in Martinique. You can find the jab in St. Lucia. You can find the jab in Grenada. You can find the jab in Dominica. And so the connection between African spirituality and the devil is deliberate. It is something that we have taken into our mind, not understanding that part of what the Jab Malasi was supposed to represent was a challenge to the society. So we hold on to one idea and throw away the rest of it. So everybody wants to be a pretty job now. Everybody wants to be a fancy job and a chocolate job and a this job and a nice job and every job playing mass in a line going down the road. Not understanding the threat, not understanding the terror that is supposed to be manifest in that masquerade, not understanding that it is also about claiming joy. It is also about freeing yourself of the identity that you are given in one space. It is also about making people fraidier. I remember as a child experiencing mass on Juve morning, seeing desperados coming down the road, seeing my father half naked to the waist with a tree. I remember the terror of hearing a biscuit tin in the background, and somewhere in my mind, understanding that this is the mass that I really wanted to play in my life, making children afraid. And trying to channel what that fear means into being unafraid to live my life with a certain amount of truth, with a certain amount of sincerity, with a certain amount of fearlessness, no matter what it is facing you. So the job is you, but the job is also what life given you, right? So who is the devil and who is not the devil? This is always the question that we must ask ourselves in this society. And this is something that we talk about in Cambule. Who is the devil? Who is the devil? Who is really the devil? The devil have we living in hell. Where is the hell that Black bodies are naturally banished to? Is the hell waiting for us somewhere else, or is the hell in the systems that are created for us right now? All of these are questions that we really supposed to be asking ourselves Juve morning, but maybe we don't have the mental space. I remember one Juve, I met the late Aaron Falami, a great Egungun priest, who he was outside Alexander's Ragtime Band. Well, where that yard used to be. Alexander's Ragtime Band, if you don't know, was one of the first steel bands to emerge in the 1920s, late 1920s. And there's no monument to them there, of course. It's on Lower Woodford Street, just before you get to Traggery Road. And Erin Falami said to me, he said, this thing that all your young people doing about playing Juvain with your face out is not what all they're supposed to be doing. And that really, it sort of shook me a bit. And I thought about it a lot, and every Juve since then, I have tried to find a way to subsume myself in some kind of mask. And it's so interesting that the whole idea of masking has now, the thing that was made illegal so that African people could not take part in the celebration is now the thing that is supposed to save our lives, or is going to save our lives, or is going to protect us in some way from becoming ill. So these are some of the things that I think about when I think about Juve. I think about getting a mask from Brianna McCarthy, one of our great contemporary artists, and wearing it in London for their quote-unquote Juve, and having so many different, such a range of experiences from people seeing me, African people seeing me, Indian people seeing me, African people coming and touching my foot because they thought that I was portraying an ancestral masquerade, and writing a little piece about it afterwards and saying, why had Trinidadians taken away the mask? Why don't we wear the mask anymore? And Roel Gibbons responding to me and saying, that's because we have actually swallowed the mask. And so that idea that we have swallowed the mask, but not given ourselves the space to do that transformation that the mask allows us to do, to be a bigger version of ourselves, to be a better version of ourselves, to be a more provocative version of ourselves, to be a more progressive version of ourselves. Where has that gone? Where has that desire to transcend the space that we are in, where has that gone? I want to say that Carnival and Juve is about three things to me. It's about duality, so the night into the day, but also the clean into the stink. It's also about the Attila as a person into Attila as a Juveus. It is about that duality. It is also about liminality. It is about the space in between those places. So the darkness that is the darkest before the dawn. But then all of a sudden the dawn emerging and you seeing yourself in a different way. You having that ritual and passage from one thing that you are to another thing that you could potentially be. The other thing that Juve is about that we forget, and this is something that Miss N2 also talked about, is satire. And if we don't understand the need for satire, then we are lost as a people. And one of the things that I have learned in my travels, in my studies, is that, in some ways, the person who embodies the masquerade is has a different level of authority within a society, within a community. The masquerade could say anything to anybody, could whip anybody, could talk anybody business in the same way that the griot or the calypsonian or the praise singer knows everybody's business and can use that space as a space of censure, as a space of questioning, as a space of challenging. And so, and also of praising, of course. And so, let's not do one-dimensional masks. If we're doing it, let's do it because it means something to us. Let's do it because this is an opportunity for us to claim African liberation in a really radical and beautiful way. Because what could be more threatening to a society than African people asserting their freedom through their songs, through their rituals, through their masquerades? It is the most threatening thing, and that is why we continue to find ways to suppress it, to repress it, to commercialize it so that it means nothing. So I think that that's all that I want to say. I give thanks for the opportunity. And I'm sure we have a little bit of time for questions. So let's take some questions.
Hi, thanks, Attila. I think we should just have a little bit of time for Baba coming off of what Attila was just talking about to give his advice to masqueraders, and then questions. We are due to finish by 7. If people wish, we can stay on for another 10 minutes or so. But of course, you can always send your questions to either caderconnect@gmail.com and also post them on our Facebook page, Cambole Movement. And you can reach out to any of us on the panel here as well with your questions. So, Baba, I would just like to invite you to talk a little bit about advice for masqueraders, just about a couple minutes, please. Thank you.
Can I have on the last slide? All right. My advice to those who are going to wear eku, those who are going to put on the special attire, they are the one I call the elegun or the eleku, what we all call masqueraders for the purpose of the discussion. One, it is important to note that whoever want to express an ancestral way by way of giving thanks or reenactment, we have to know that it is the wearing of the eku, the special attire. Now, we have to know that they have to know that this performance has both spiritual and physical aspects. People should not just look at it from a social and physical aspect alone. It has a spiritual connotation. So my advice, as the old people normally do, before you go under the eku, before you put on the special attire, there is need to seek spiritual guidance. There is need to know a lot about the ancestor in question that they want to express, demonstrate, and the event that they want to reenact. And above all, when they seek spiritual guidance, they will also be guided as per what needs to be done, so that they can be in a perfectly aligned state with their Ori. By their Ori, I mean they are in a perfectly aligned state with their divine self, with their higher self, or their inner self, so that everything will go on as aligned. You know, for example, somebody speak to me about how they would like to bring out a costume to depict Ajay, for example. Ajay is the energy of wealth. That is fine. So, but the point I'm giving to all eku wearers, masqueraders as you call them, is there is need for spiritual guidance. Depending on the ancestor in question and what you want to express, they must not look at it from the social aspect alone, but also take care of themselves from a spiritual point of view. You don't want to put on an eku, and at the end of the day, you fall sick or you create this problem or that problem for yourself. Spiritual guidance is at the core of my advice to all eleku, elegun, or masqueraders, as you choose to call them. Thank you. I'm trying. I did that in a very
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate the shortness, but you're going to have to come back because we are going to go to questions now. And we have a question that came through on Facebook asking, what is the significance of the whip in the Paraka? And they made the point that it shows up everywhere in Caribbean masquerade, Haiti and Trinidad and Tobago and so on. So, Baba, can you speak to that, please?
The whip. I will bring it in a very short way. The whip is not just a stick. They are stick made from a particular plant. And what they symbolize and embodied is that they have been specially prepared. And because they come from a particular tree, the whip symbolize what is used to whip out all undesirable essence and energy in the society, in the community. So it's a symbol of cleansing, spiritual cleansing of the society. You might see people nowadays who now use it to beat themselves. That is just the social and the demonstration aspect of it. But essentially, the whip are made from what is called atori or some other special tree, not just a stick, not a branch of a tree from any plant. They are from specific plant. And you know, each plant has their own esoteric essence. So they are used in cleansing and whipping all forms of undesirable, unwanted, unneeded, unenhancing energy and forces in the space.
Okay, yeah, Shay, thank you. Makes sense. I also wanted to ask, in the images with the AU festival, um, there's a stick that they hold, and I wanted to ask, can you explain, is that stick exactly what you just described there, or is it something different?
They have a close similarity. The stick you see in the Eyo's hand are called opambata, different from what the Egungun will call that is called shop. So opambata carry the same essence of using it to ward off negativity, but it is only used by Eyo.
Okay. I have a question that I will, thank you, Baba. I have a question that I will direct to Entu under Tilla. Well, this is from Facebook. Many of our traditional characters perform rituals in order. Oh, sorry, Zakia is making a comment that many of our traditional characters do perform rituals in order to prepare for their masquerade. That's a critical point. And I wondered if either N2 or Tilla or both could speak to that in the context of how we prepare for mass and why people should be doing it more.
Okay, all these traditional masquerades coming from that area, Laventille and so on. Remember, there were a lot of shrines dedicated to the Orisha in that area. And if you talk to anybody who plays traditional mass, the Black Indian, the Midnight Robber, the Job, they go into periods of fasting. They go into periods where they abstain from sex, abstain from meat. If you talk to any of those masqueraders,
Alcohol.
alcohol, okay? It is very ritualistic. It is very similar to like when the old people are preparing for what they call feast or ever. And it is very much part of that. All those masqueraders do it and they talk about it.
I mean, in terms of specific rituals that we do for Kambule, I mean, the first thing that we do is we go to the Babalao, we go to our Oluo, and he gives us specific guidance for the year for that ritual and that possibility. I mean, it's so funny that, you know, this year when we were doing the film, and I remember talking with the producer Laurie, and Laurie saying, "Listen, we can't go ahead with this. We don't have any money." I said to her, I said, "Baba," I went and I sat with the Babalao, and Ifa says yes. If Ifa says yes, nobody could say no, right? So, and we sort of went forward with faith that Ifa had said yes. And so nobody, man, woman, child, dog, cat, could say no to us at this point. And so I think that it's the, you know, for a lot of people who are doing their ritual practice, they have inherited rituals, right? So if you have been playing Dame Lorraine and your mother was playing Dame Lorraine and your grandmother was playing Dame Lorraine, chances are you will do the ritual that you saw them doing. And I know that this is certainly the case for a lot of people who are doing specific types of traditional mass. They have inherited rituals. And you know, the unfortunate thing, I think, for some of our mass yards is that they inherited rituals. They came and meet something, and perhaps they don't have a context. perhaps a lot of the knowledge has been lost through the years, so they only got like a piece of the knowledge, and then like somebody else has a little piece and somebody else has a little piece, and so everything is not in the same place. And because they are not, say for example, embedded in a holistic spiritual practice, but just simply doing a particular type of mass every year, it might be that they're doing rituals that they don't necessarily understand, in the same way that they are portraying an ancestral masquerade that they do not understand. I mean, I've heard some stories in the last few years of people playing certain types of mass and dying soon after. And that's just a reality. I mean, one of the things that Baba has said to us in the past is we are doing ancestral work. And if you're calling ancestors will reach. Right? And we are inviting certain. And the other thing that we have to be clear about is, particularly with the work that we do with Kambule, is that we are reenacting the lives of people who perhaps did not have good lives. They weren't living. They weren't necessarily fasting. They were living on the edge. They were living very stressful lives. They were probably living very short, brutish lives where they were, in situations of abuse, whether in their families or whether from the people who were employing them or not employing them. So that, when these energies come, they're coming with everything that they left when in their lives when they passed on to another realm. And so, sometimes when we see certain energy manifest at Carnival, we wonder why. But it is because it is just all of this energy. I mean, the savannah was a place of enslavement. We are literally jumping up on energy that has been there for centuries of our ancestors who died, who lived really hard lives in order for us to have a place of celebration. And I mean, if we're not acknowledging that energy or understanding that it exists, things happen and we don't have a language to explain why a certain thing is happening. I've seen so many things happen on the Savannah stage. I've seen so many things happen to masqueraders. I've seen so many things happen to soca artists who singing a particular kind of song, and they don't understand the energy that they are manifesting. And if you don't understand the energy that you're manifesting, then why you're really doing it.
I think absolutely. I think it's important to also put into the conversation the separation that we have from African spirituality, and the fact that people would be so shocked with Leroy Clark when he would say he's a Obia man, and because clearly he would be goading them, but they would not understand where that statement would be coming from and why he would make statements like that, and why Entu would talk about Obia and other aspects of African spirituality that have been demonized. And so this whole question of ritual, it also points us to the fact that we have been so separated from ourselves. And I mean, Earl Lovelace, I'm always fascinated by the ritual in Dragon Can Dance, for instance, and all those rituals that ordinary people took on to come to transform into the mass and the power and so on that it gave them. So I think that it is a really important point to make. Somebody also asked a question about, I think we can just do one more, although they asked about Jab Malasi and instilling fear in the owners of the enslaved, but I don't think that would have been present at that time. But Attila, if you want to just speak very, very briefly on that, just so we have a couple of minutes.
I mean, certainly, I think that the Jab Malasi is the ultimate symbol of marriage, because I mean, this is somebody who has perhaps transcended from one space to the next, but it's also perhaps somebody who comes back to the plantation disguised. right? So it is a possibility of yeah. You want to say something?
Yeah, when you finish.
The John Malassi as a threat. Let's just remember that, after emancipation, things didn't just,
Yeah.
become normal. It wasn't like, Emancipation Day came and then all of a sudden the Europeans who owned people started treating these ex-enslaved people as people, right? And so the Job Malassi emerged because there is still that need to remind the people who got reparations from the English crown, right? Because lots of families who owned people got reparations, right? Some of those families still exist in our society till today, right? They got paid. They got millions of pounds back
20.
for the loss of their property, right? And so the reality of the situation is that that tension didn't go away. It didn't go away, and so the whether and this is something that is said in Cambule as well, whether slave or free, we could still debate. That question of the 6 years of apprenticeship that were imposed, and the fact that people definitely resisted that, absolutely resisted that. It's really important to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. And to Ms.
Yeah,
Antu, you wanted
what
to
I
say something?
wanted to say was that Leroy has a phrase that he says, history pretends amnesia. That is such a full and terrible phrase, And when that Jab Molasi and all of those things, the African in playing this mass was deliberately reminding himself and reminding the society of the traumas of enslavement, because every single thing was done in the society to force the African to forget enslavement. And it is happening up to today. Look at what is happening in the States. There's a big debate. Slavery must not be taught in schools. People must not know about enslavement. It's happening here in the education system. There's no real reckoning. There's no real, the reparation movement in Trinidad and Tobago is more or less dead.
I just want to add one more thing, and that is that, it's
very
very rarely mentioned that our police force was actually disbanded after emancipation and reconstituted after that, because they actually had to have a police force now, because the people who were property, who were being protected by the security on the plantations, or the people who were being fenced in on these plantations, were now all over the place. And so they had to be corralled in a different way now. And so that connection between enslavement and emancipation and the formation or the expansion of our police force is something that we are yet to come to terms with and yet to begin to speak about. And that's also a really crucial part of understanding how African bodies continue to be criminalized and how our cultural forms and spiritual forms continue to be criminalized as well.
So true. I would just would like to, we're approaching 7, and I think we've had a full, rich discussion. I would like to ask Arabo Olatunji Shomorin to just say a few brief words in closing, and then followed by Attila and by Ms. Entu. Just very briefly, please.
Thank you, Dara. I want to say on behalf of K2CFI Institute, an educational institute that has scheduled serves to teach and educate people about Ifa and all Asian tradition that we are very happy to be part of this. We look forward to doing more of this, and we want everybody to know that Egungun ancestral veneration is universal. That is what many Esaifa put. Once you are born by somebody, by someone, you have to acknowledge your ancestor. And if you fail to do it, you will also not be acknowledged. So in actual fact, what we are doing by celebrating our ancestors, we are just venerating ourselves indirectly. So my demand is that our ancestors will continue to guide and guide us, and we will be able to take things to a better place than how it was passed on to us. Ashe, once again, greetings from K2 Fancy to Edakeda Group and Emancipation Support Committee as collaborators. We are happy to be part of this, and we look forward to more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Attila, very briefly.
I have
please.
nothing else to say, but Ashe, give thanks, give thanks. This was great. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have a question about stick fighting, but we will deal with that offline, and we will share on our
Stick
Facebook
fighting is a
page.
whole nother thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a whole
But
nother thing.
what we could do, because we talked about doing another one close during the carnival period, so we could talk about that, right? But I'll
Great.
share information about how people could reach out to us after. So, Elder and two, please, just very briefly.
We give thanks. We give thanks to our ancestors, to my own ancestors who played mass. One who was a stick fighter, the next one who used to play warao mass. I give thanks to them. I give thanks to the Garifuna man from St. Vincent. I give thanks to all my ancestors. I give thanks. I'm proud as mother that my children, Dara and Attila, are here. And I know that when I become an ancestor, that I have left good people to carry
In about
on.
50 years.
And that is a good feeling. I want to say thanks to the Emancipation Support Committee for partnering with us and doing so wholeheartedly and wonderfully. And how can I say thanks to my Olowo, who has been part of guiding us on this journey with Kambule. We do not, as Tilla said, we do not do Kambule until and unless we have accessed his guidance. And I say to him all the time, and I say to people, my Olowo is as unerring as Ochosi. Thank you, Baba. Thank you to Iakemi and to Ketas. And we give thanks. We give thanks. We give thanks.
Ashe. I just want to also express my thanks to everyone who took part today, to Zakia and the lovely Renee. So open, so sharing, so generous, and to Zakia, as I mentioned, who's been part of our lives from a revolutionary perspective and a family perspective and organizational angle. She's there, very, very wonderful person. I just also want to thank the people who have tuned in. I've been peeping at the Facebook page and so on. Enough people sharing, commenting, sending fire emojis, all kind of thing. I'm glad that you enjoy our content. This is what we are about. We are about, dispelling a lot of the nonsense, the shipper talk, the old talk that, as we say in Trinidad and Tobago, but also about adding value to what you do, and to helping you, guiding you, to make your own way and to becoming closer to your African origins, to your African spirituality, to your African heritage. I also want to, just as we close, to remind people to please, if you're enjoying this content, to continue to support us. Donate to the Fund Me T&T account. Follow us, like us, subscribe, and you can email us at idakeda idakeda connect at gmail.com, and help us to build community. Help us to continue bringing programs like this to you, help us to improve our equipment and to be able to maybe hire people, speak to people overseas, etc., to really broaden what we do so that the content that we bring to you can be even bigger and better. So thank you very much. Stay safe, protect yourselves. We are still in a pandemic. Do what you need to do, be careful, and remember your African spirituality, remember your African heritage, remember that you came from a mother and a father, and you remember your ancestry. Okay? Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.